Hello and welcome to all our viewers. You're watching Countdown right here on Bloomberg Quint. Today's session has been a very interesting one. Right from the start of the trading session, we opened up slightly more subdued, but towards the second half of trade, post the clarification of the government, and the indices have now propelled themselves and are up more than 1%. We'll talk about all of that and more in just a few moments, but quickly running you through the headlines for the day. The government clarifies on the recent standoff with the Reserve Bank, says that it respects the autonomy of the central bank but will continue its consultations in the issue of public interest. Markets are set to end the month on a high. The Nifty trades around the 10,300 mark. Metal stocks, however, are bucking the trend. Tech Mahindra gains the most in over a year and a half after its strong second quarter performance. IT also the top gainer on the Nifty. And Coal India is among the top Nifty losers after the government plans to divest up to 9% of its stake via an offer for sale. Good afternoon, Neeraj. An interesting turn of events. The second half of trade looking relatively stronger than the first.
You bet, Devina. I think, as we said, I think when the statements come out, comforting statements, a lot of people would say the markets were needlessly worried because nothing like that was in the offing. But, having said that, once those statements came out, somewhere around this period, post that, in the last 1 hour, we've had the markets gain nearly 1%. So it's a good last 1 hour of trade for the markets. I must say, just before we move on to the other buckets, bring up the currency as well, because the rupee, which was trading at 74, the low today was 74.08 or thereabouts, currently at 73.86. So there's a pullback in the currency as well. This may not show the pullback, but the Bloomberg chart would have showed you that there is a sharp spike upwards, which would essentially mean that there's a bit of strengthening in the currency in the session today. Right here, look at it. This is where the fall happened, but then a bit of a pullback that happened in the currency post 12:45, a pullback that happened in the rupee in the session today. So this is the start, of course, of the trading day today. Nevertheless, the equity markets, and that's what we focus on. The banks are not doing as well as the other in the Nifty and the Sensex are, but the heat map should show you that what's moving and what's not. The banks about 0.2% in the green, but even Stevens for the gainers and the losers. However, the non-banking names, Tech Mahindra 7.5, Indiabulls Housing 7.5, but the big boys which are giving the teeth to the Nifty today, HDFC 5%, the big weightage, Infosys 5% big weightage, and then Nifty IT by itself, so TCS and the likes are doing very well. So Nifty IT giving that basic support, but HDFC doing its bit as well. What's not doing well? Tata Steel has, been in slumber for most part of the trading day, off the lows of the day, but still 3.5% lower. Coal India down about 3%. Maruti, another couple of percentage points lower for Maruti. Now circa the 6,500 odd level, so that one has been under pressure, 6,600 or thereabouts. And Bharat Airtel has been under a bit of pressure in the session today. I must say, it is the last 1 hour that we're talking about, and that belongs to the gainers, I'm guessing, at the broader end of the spectrum too.
Was definitely, Neeraj, and you can see that in the upliftment of spirit across the board for the mid caps as well as small caps as well. Some earnings related reactions as well that have come in, which have propelled stocks like a Cummins India for one, which is up about 13%. Escort reported its numbers, an 11% bump up in the EBITDA number. Stocks up about 2%, while Dabur disappointed the street. Numbers came below street expectations. The stocks down closer to 3% in trade. Other than that, some other mid cap movers, IRB Infra also sees an uptick in today's session, 8.5% higher on the back of numbers. Torrent Pharma is relatively flat in trade today, and Mindtree is the other one from the mid-cap IT basket that does okay for itself today. So the IT as a pocket is very active in today's session. Some volume buzzers to talk about, and small and bank like UCO Bank is up about 7.5% on 38 lakh shares traded, which is much more than the last 20 days average. Sonata Software and Take Solutions from the mid-cap IT basket again looking extremely active. Take Solutions trading closer to 8 lakh shares in trade today. Among some of the losers, Hindustan Zinc is one of the top losers in the broader markets, down about 8.5%, followed by Manpasan Beverages and Tata Global Beverages, but disappointed in the numbers, and the stock's been taken down by about 4.5%. But let's quickly run you through some cues for trade from the futures and options space, and Darshan joins in for that. Good afternoon, Darshan.
Devina, and we are now trading pretty much at the highest point of the day. Look at the move that's come in as far as the Nifty is concerned, the Bank Nifty is concerned. Fresh buying seen on the Nifty, open interest build up of 5%, and the counter is up almost 1.5%. The Bank Nifty is seeing open interest build up of 12%, and the index is up by almost 200 points. So there is enough traction. The VIX has managed to cool off given the fact that the markets are rallying in trade. Where are positions now being taken? You're seeing that, at 10,000 and 10,200 is where put writers are active and call writers are active from levels of 10,300 to higher levels. Today in trade, put writers will have become much more aggressive from 10,200. They're writing in at 10,300, and call writers are forced to shut positions at the 10,300 mark in trade. Some of the stocks that we need to talk about. Cummins came out with strong set of numbers. Look at the open interest build up of 87%, that too on the long side. The other counter I want to highlight is Coal India, with saying open interest build up of 65%, that too on the short side. As the last stock that I want to highlight is Torrent Pharma, very low. It's gained only open interest build up of 1%, but there is fresh buying that's seen on the counter.
Wow, interesting. So that's, of course, the market setup. Now, let's talk about a few earnings that will come out. A bunch of, by the way, PNB Housing Finance numbers are out, and just want to mark those before we move on. They've raised about, sorry, not numbers, but they've raised via an amount via commercial papers, and announcements of these nature really tend to give a fillip to NBFC names currently. A lot of rumors doing the rounds, but this is official announcement, I presume. So 2,450 crores via commercial papers that the companies managed to find that liquidity and find takers for that should augur well for PNB Housing Finance. So 10% higher for this one in the session today. Remember, the market mood is a bit buoyant as well, so that only adds. But frankly, any NBFC that has been beaten down, out of shape, and a lot of them are, if they manage to raise such large amounts via commercial papers, then that would mean easing of the liquidity situation for that company at least, and should augur well. So PNB Housing Finance, not surprised, it's up. I'm not saying this is how it will stay, but it's a good reaction towards arguably a good piece of news for PNB Housing Finance as well.
Let's see if the volume also is picked up alongside the pricing activity, because it looks like a real shoot from here on, 10.5% on the price. But whether or not the volume supports it is something that you need to watch out for. We'll keep a track of this one. But other than that, there are more earnings results coming in. That's so there you have it on your screen. Not so much so. So volumes are pretty in line with the last 20 days average. There's not much happening in the volume. It's just the initial price fluctuation that you're seeing, a knee-jerk reaction to the news. But let's take a look at what's happening in the Nifty companies reporting numbers today. We are expecting L&T, Vedanta, Tata Motors, three big companies reporting numbers today. They haven't yet already. L&T is already, though, trading at the highest point of the day at 1290. Darshan, what is the sense on what's expected from L&T this quarter?
So 10% top line growth, close to 13% EBITDA growth, which means margins of close to 11.5%. Profits will be lower this time around, given the fact there was an exceptional last time around, and lower other income is seen, higher depreciation is seen. So that's the broad financials that you're looking at. They've done well on execution terms, both in India and abroad. Some of their hydrocarbons business are doing well, defense business is doing well, EPC is doing well, so that's something that you need to watch out for. Interesting to see what order book they will pal out, because we are expecting order inflow of close to 40,000 crore. The management had indicated that it will be front-ended, so there could be more orders that could come in. Last time around there was an exceptional gain, and that is why the profit number will seem lower. Guidance, revenue guidance of 12 to 15% and order inflow guidance of 10 to 12%. Any change will come to know only in the press conference that happens after market hours today.
Okay, that's Larsen & Toubro, the numbers there and the expectations thereof. The other big number, thanks Darshan for that. The other big number that's coming out is Tata Motors, and Yatin, he's joining in right now to talk a little bit more about the expectations from Tata Motors.
Afternoon, Devina, and if you look at Tata Motors, this time the numbers are expected to be muted, despite the fact that we have a 3% consolidated revenue growth, which the analysts are expecting. Of course, the muted number is on the back of a 20% decline in JLR volumes ex the China joint venture. Now, if you look at the absolute EBITDA, we are expecting a decline of nearly 27% there. And as far as the P&L account is concerned, we are expecting a loss of total 874 crores versus a profit of nearly 2,000 crores last year, same period. Of course, margins also are expected to be slightly lower. 9% is the figure that we are working with. This is due to the fact that the JLR volumes are lower, and more importantly higher discounts and promotional costs will be weighing in on the overall margins. More importantly, JLR is expected to post a loss of nearly 150 million to 200 million British pounds in terms of foreign exchange losses. The margins for JLR entity are seen at 7.6% versus a level of 11.8% year on year. And of course, the EBITDA decline for JLR will be as steep as 43%. Of course, apart from the earnings, the key thing to watch out for is whether or not the management is cutting the capex targets for JLR, given the fact that they are already sitting on over capacities, and also the kind of demand trends that they're looking at, especially in the US and the China market.
Okay, the third Nifty company reporting numbers. Yatin, thanks for that. The third Nifty company reporting numbers today is Vedanta. Likely to be a mixed quarter for the company. Numbers should be out any time actually. Nikki Mirchan is here to take us through the quarter gone by. What the numbers could look like rather. Nikki.
A rather muted quarter and offering for Vedanta. Revenue, we are looking at a 5% downtick there to a number of around 20,600 crore. In terms of EBITDA, we are expecting a 2% uptick there, pretty much flattest quarter year-on-year basis on consolidated level for the company. We're estimating a number of around 5,700 odd crore. Margins are seen at 28% as compared to nearly 26%. And if you look at the profitability of the company, we're expecting a 35% downtick on that number to a number of 1,350 odd crore. What goes behind the making of the numbers? We're expecting the aluminium and the zinc business to weigh down on the operational performance of the company. This is expected to pretty much negate all the gains that we are expected to see from the power as well as the oil and gas business. For lower volumes and zinc prices are expected to weigh on international as well as the Indian zinc business. And in terms of alumina, we're expecting higher alumina costs, coal costs combined with lower realization to weigh on the performance of aluminium business. While the story is no different for copper business, which continues to face losses in terms of closure, and in terms of the crude oil, there we're expecting an uptick on account of the profitability in oil and gas business due to higher crude oil prices. Now, 4 things that we like to keep an eye out will be the progress of 1.25 MTPA plant. Apart from that, the base momentum prices or the outlook given forward for these commodities. Apart from that, we are also going to be watching out for the petition that Vedanta a few days back filed in terms of the import hike, in terms of the hike on aluminium products, and also any updates coming in on the bidding process for Electro Steel, given that Renaissance Steel has alleged that the company is ineligible for the bid of Electro Steel.
Got that. Nikki, thanks a lot for that. That's the expectations out of Vedanta. So 3 big names, results for L&T for one, should be expected anytime shortly. The other one that's come out with numbers is from the smaller banking, or Dena Bank's losses in the September quarter widened to 416.7 crores on a year-on-year basis. The bank, however, is confident of recoveries and resolutions that will aid its asset quality. Ira Duggal spoke to the bank's MD and CEO Karnan Shekhar and began by asking him about his plans to improve the bank's asset quality. Listen.
Dena Bank is reeling under the pressure of huge NPA percentage, and but March 18, if you compare, and June 18, there was slight reduction in the gross NPA level. In September, there is a little spike, but overall stock for gross NPA, that is SMA2, has significantly come down. So therefore, NPA percentage, though it looks around 22 to 23%, this quarter I can say that gross NPL level will not go up. It is further accretion has stopped actually, and the net loss as compared to last quarter has significantly come down, and operating profit has gone up as compared to June quarter. And we have been able to make very significant progress in recovery and return of accounts, so that has added a huge quantum jump in the other income for Dena Bank size. Because for other income, we can't focus on LCBG, non-fund based business, or other cross-selling, because that contribution is very minimal. So we are focusing on this recovery and return of accounts, which has added up, and then therefore net loss has come down significantly as compared to last quarter. Gross NPA 23%, and we are hopeful because Dena Bank essentially in the section of corporate credit, we have been essentially in all big value, high value accounts, high value NPAs. And most of them, they went to NCLT and NCLAT, and some of them are very advanced stage of resolution. and at least 5-6 cases in our case, they are at the advanced stage, and that are likely to, accounting entries are likely to be passed in the month of November and December. So therefore, our NPA, absolute amount gross NPA will significantly come down in December. And we are also focusing on ARC sales wherever we find this is the right candidate for ARC sale, and there is some good interest among ARCs, and where some other banks have already sold. So such cases we are identifying and then taking steps to put it on auction for ARC sale.
Okay.
And there also we are looking at good progress. So couple NCLT cases and the ARC cases, and some of them we are settling one-on-one also, bilateral cases. All put together, in my opinion, our own assessment, very, very conservatively, our gross NPA should come down by at least 4,000 to 5,000 crores in the next 2 quarters. So that would significantly bring down the gross NPA percentage. Though in absolute terms there is no increase in gross NPA, percentage terms is going up because our denominator is actually shrinking. We are not allowed to grow in credit because we are PCA banks. We are one among those 11 PCA banks.
Right.
But there are also relatively, comparatively more stringent norms are applied on Dena Bank. So, and so now we are not permitted to grow because we are not growing in the denominator. Our percentage is slightly to look that it has gone up, but actually on absolute terms we are comfortable, we are okay. December, March we will see very significant progress in this area.
Okay, sir, I have a couple of specific questions on the asset quality side. So you said that in absolute terms you've gone down. That's not actually true, right? Amount of gross NPA, from what I can read from your release, is 16,000, a little bit above 16,000 crore compared to 15,000 crore last year. So even in absolute numbers you've gone up from what I can see from the release. Can you tell us what the slippages this quarter were? Can you tell us what is the...
Compared to June quarter, as compared to June quarter, September quarter, we have gone up by 250 crores.
Yeah.
But as compared to March quarter, we have come down. So gross NPS more of this 250, 200 over a figure of almost 65,000, 70,000 crores of assets. So it is not a very significant amount. So therefore, the percentage terms, absolute amount, it is staying stable.
Okay.
Around 16,000. But we see significant because all the groundwork has been done. As I said, they are all at the final maturity stage and for the resolution. So therefore, December and March quarters, we are hopeful.
A little bit, sir, on what has been happening in terms of your lending book. So as you said, you've got restrictions, you can't lend. So you're, what has sort of been the strategy of the bank on that front?
So because we have the restrictions right now, first strategy is to reduce the gross NPAs and improve the profitability, if possible, turn it into profit. So these two are first targets for us, and once we achieve that and once we come out of PCA, then we are normal bank and then we will be allowed to do normal lending operations, then the book will grow. So right now in the last 2-3 quarters we have been in the contracting phase only, and whatever resources we have, time we have, efforts we have, all those things we have been diverting to reduction gross NPA and recovery and written off accounts, and of course improvement in the CASA. On the liability side, churning is happening. All bulk deposits we are replacing with CASA deposits. CASA deposits as a percentage is growing, and therefore the cost of funds is coming down. So therefore we have a comfortable NIM of 2.62 now, and with the same strategy for the next 2 quarters, by March 19, our NIM, we are hoping at least we will be able to take it up by 20-25 basis points. So that is the aspiration.
But is there any visibility?
So
is there any visibility, sir?
If we are able to make some profit for March 19.
Is there any visibility, sir, on coming out of PCA? Because I think till December, the RBI has told you need to stay under PCA. Going by your NPA percentages at least, it doesn't look like it will happen anytime in the next few quarters.
Yeah, so that for you it may look like that, but because we have the visibility of some high value NPA accounts getting settled through NCLT, and some of the accounts we are hopeful that we will be able to settle it through ARC route. 23% is the gross NPA percentage now, so we are hopeful that we will be able to bring it down to 15%. But as per PCA norms, net NPA percentage they take 6 to 9%, 9 to 12%, about 12%. So our provisioning percentage in Dena Bank is very good at 67-68% on average, both the June quarter and this quarter. So therefore our net NPA, whatever I said, if we are able to recover 4,000 to 5,000 crores of NPAs in the next 2 quarters, net NPA percentage would come down to around 5.5–6%. So if we are able to reach there, then we will be able to come out of PCA.
All right. Well, let's focus in on specific counters and in fact the markets at large too. We are up about 1% for the Nifty and the Sensex. The Nifty Bank is up about 0.75%. A quick check-in with Manav Chopra on the markets and then get in a word on Tata Steel as well, because that's the stock that is coming off in the session today. But Manav is with us. Manav, a quick thought here. The index doing so well. Last 1 hour has been a big trade. How are you approaching?
See, most importantly, the markets have hold on to its the important support of 10,000, 10,100, a very strong reversal from those levels, and the prices after after a couple of trading sessions, has breached the crucial hurdles of 10,250 decisively today. And I sense that on the immediate basis, you will see a short-term rally towards 10,450. But what we were discussing last time, I think we are still there, on a medium-term perspective, I think 10,750 is going to be the upside targets that we're looking at. Bank Nifty specifically, has seen a very strong base formation around the levels of 24,300, 24,500. It has on the upside 25,100 is the resistance. Once if we breach that, we are going to see a short-term rally of another 500 to 800 points. But on the larger time frame, 26,200 is what we are looking at. So I think Nifty, Bank Nifty all together is going to see a very good rally. PSU banks from the banking space is going to see a very good up move in the near term.
So let's talk about the trading play here.
Yeah.
What you're recommending on?
Yes, at the current levels, we have 3 topics. The first buy call is on Axis Bank. The prices after a good short-term reversal has breached its important trend line resistance, which is confirming a good short-term bottom in place. The prices have also held its important weekly support clusters on its long-term averages. So, it's clearly indicating that the prices are forming a good higher base. Volumes are also suggesting some good momentum shifts. So, it has a very strong support at 560 on the lower side. We recommend a buy into this with a stop of 554 for an upside target of 620. My second buy call is on Union Bank. The PSU banks as a whole, has seen a very good momentum shift happen yesterday in a couple of trading sessions, and Union Bank specifically yesterday observed historical highest cash volumes and with a breakout on the weekly perspective. So it's not only indicating a short-term reversal, but it's indicating that, I will not be surprised to see a good sharp 15–20% move in a very short span of time. So this is definitely a buy if somebody wants a very good short-term alpha. So 71 is the stop loss we are recommending for an upside target of 86. My last call would be a buy on PTC. The prices on the weekly monthly charts has formed a very good base formation. It has formed a morning star with a double bottom. So it clearly indicates that there is limited downside from the current levels, and since the prices are in deep oversold levels, I sense that we could see a good swift upside of another 20%. So it has strong support at 72. We recommend a buy in this with a stop loss of 70 for an upside target of 90.
Okay. Would you have a call on Tata Steel? The stock has been quite weak in today's session.
In fact, metal as a space, is likely going to be in a consolidation zone. I don't see a very good sharp move on the immediate basis. In fact, if I have to pick something from the metal space, Tata Steel would be an avoid. In fact, it is just trying to form a base formation around the levels of 530 on the immediate basis, and has strong resistance at 560. So, this could be trading in a broad range of 4 to 5%. But if I have to pick something from the metal space, I think JSW Steel looks very well placed. The price has actually declined from its recent peak, and it's hovering near its 200 EMA. Some good short-term accumulation pattern has been observed on our intraday charts and has very good margin of safety. So 335, 330 is an important support. One can have a stop placed below 330 or a stop loss of only 8 points. But in case if the trade works out, you can get the immediate targets close to 365 to 370.
Okay, it is in fact, but so while JSW Steel is the idea, Tata Steel is the top Nifty loser today, and Bloomberg reported that the European Commission is going to conduct a probe into the Tata Steel ThyssenKrupp merger. Nikki Cunha is standing by to talk about what's being investigated and how that may impact the company. Nikki.
Hi Neeraj. In the morning it was reported that Tata Steel and ThyssenKrupp JV will face an in-depth probe coming in from European Union on account of a couple of concerns which relate to the competition that will stand reduced in supply of various high-end steels. This move comes at a time when steelmakers are already struggling with trade barriers, and EU has set March 2019 as a deadline to issue final ruling on the proposed deal between the two giants. However, Tata Steel, we saw this the stock actually slipping as much as 6.5% in the morning trade. However, there is some recovery which has come on for. The company has now trading with losses around 2.5%. This is post the clarification that came in on the exchanges, where the company said that the company has noted concern, Tata Steel has noted concerns and will continue the discussion with the European Commission. The proposed JV subject to merger control clearance in several jurisdictions, including the European Union, and the company would provide further information and analysis to secure the required approval for the proposed JV.
Got that. Nikki, thanks a lot for highlighting the same for us. Tata Steel, one of the top losers on the index this afternoon, down about 3.5%. Keep an eye out for numbers which are coming in thick and fast. Balrampur Chini reporting its Q2 numbers. The revenue at 1,015 odd crores has come in slightly lower. EBITDA is also down 1.8% at 141.1 crores. The stock is down 5.5% at this point. 104 is where it's trading at.
Then I must add, though, that it might not be the right move to judge a company like Balrampur or any of the other sugar companies based on what they've done in the quarter gone by. I think the real meat in the sugar business starts from the new crushing season, wherein the production would be higher. The pricing, I mean, some of these hold inventory which is priced at 25-26 rupees. The current prices northwards of 29 or 30 because of the minimum support price that the government has indicated. And if indeed the ethanol tenders which are now out in the open get subscribed to, and they are able to supply ethanol at a higher price, and that might just materially change the dynamics. So yes, the stock is down today. The stocks have cooled off as well. In fact, Narendra Murkum that we spoke to also mentioned to the same effect. But maybe, just maybe, the real results from the sugar companies, if indeed they are to perform, could start off only in a quarter or two. This might not be the right time to look at some of these names. Talk to Gurmeet Chadha of Complete Circle Consultancy, joins us right now on the show, where we started off maybe with Tata Steel, but since we're on the topic of Balrampur Chini and the numbers, Gurmeet, thanks so much for joining in. Some numbers on the screen. EBITDA down slightly, the net profit also marginally off, revenue numbers looking okay. Have you looked at sugar recently?
Yes, Nilesh, and as you rightly pointed out, while there will be some knee-jerk reaction to the numbers, I think the real story begins, as you rightly said, when the crushing season starts, MSP picks up. We have seen even in overseas, production cuts being announced across countries. So that flooding of sugar, which was a real concern, could slightly ebb out a bit. And I think the ethanol, I think this could be a big structural move if it were to phase out. So we can't really give a fundamental call on something like sugar, which is so heavily regulated, a lot of interventions, but definitely could be a good trading call from a near-term perspective.
All right. What are you doing, Gurmeet, in the medium term to long term right now?
So we are seeing a very smart sector rotation in the market. We've seen how so it was retail banks and NBFCs a couple of quarters back, and we've seen now how the focus has shifted quickly to the corporate lenders and some of the PSUs. So within the BFSI, we've had discussions on value migration from PSUs to private to NBFCs. I think we'll see some reversion there. And if you see even the Bank of Baroda numbers, if you see the gross slippages are just 2,200 crores, which is like a 7-8 quarter low. The NIMs have been very steady despite the changes in interest rate cycle. We've seen ICICI Bank numbers being very appreciated. Stock has already made a move in this kind of a market. So corporate lenders, I think, is where we are asking clients to gradually, and I deliberately emphasize on the word gradually, because I think the market will take a little more time to absorb a lot of action around us. So corporate lending banks has been one addition. EPC space, again, that's another rotation happening. We've seen capital good companies. We saw Cummins. Probably L&T will come up with numbers today. If you look at escorts, there also the construction business and the railway business has contributed to the 30% jump in revenues. So that's another space which, we are asking clients to gradually get, and selectively some pharma and IT names. So, but doing it very, very selectively.
Okay. Those are some of the ideas there from Gurmeet. Edelweiss is up 5%, again locked up on upper circuit. Remember, ever since it's reported its numbers, there have actually been no sellers available for the stock. So from a level of 137, the day it reported numbers, the stock's now trading at 162. So it's definitely seen some amount of buying action. The other one is IIFL Holding, and that stock too in today's session is up closer to 5.5% trading at 454 currently, followed by the likes of a Jindal Saw. Emphasis sees some bar of recovery today, 250. This particular stock actually has seen some significant selling pressure from levels of closer to about 1200 odd. The stock's now sub 1000 at 979, taken the brunt along with the likes of a Mindtree as well, which saw some significant correction since it's already been very stretched on valuations. The stock had already run up quite a bit, so some profit taking on these names. Interglobe Aviation, 0.25% higher or so. Manav, anything that you're seeing on some of these mid-tier IT names, Emphasis, Mindtree?
You see, looking at the charts for Mindtree, the prices have seen a very sharp breakout happen today, and most importantly, it has breached important weekly resistance line and trading above its short-term averages. The volumes are also quite supportive. I sense that the risk-reward ratio may not be very favorable for any intraday trader, but in case the stock sees a short-term dip towards the support of 835, 840, I think that is the time when one can reinitiate a long positions. Looking at the overall trend, since the prices have declined from the highs of 1180, we could see a swift rally towards the levels of 900. Even HCL Technologies is looking very well placed. I think this is something that we had recommended last time. The prices have seen a good breakout from its sideways consolidation after testing its long-term averages, has formed a very strong support around the levels of 1000, 1020. I sense that the stock is well poised to test its all-time highs of 1120 and eventually even break above that. So if I have to pick something, HCL Technologies and Wipro could be the pick to go forward in case if you have to take a medium-term view.
I should have the Nifty intraday chart going up on your screen. It's the highest point of the day for the indices, now up almost 1.5%. So that's 10,340 to a good 144 points higher after yesterday's 50-point cut that we've been seeing. And it's been a gradual move upwards, so it's not like there's been any knee-jerk reaction in any part of the day. But right from the start of the trading session, closer to about 10:30, that's when the market started to make its move, and it hasn't turned back so far. 10,343 on the Nifty. Gurmeet, L&T is reporting numbers today. What are the key factors that you'll be watching out for?
So, the FCT, I think I'll be very keen on both the ANC as well as the hydrocarbon bit. They have made a 5-pronged strategy called Lakshay, which had 2-3 very important ingredients, and one was the reducing the net working capital cycle requirement from 24% to 18%. This obviously is a 5-year plan. They've talked about doubling the turnover to 2 trillion. They've talked about margins, better margins from about 10% to almost 12% operating margins, and on the divestment bit on the non-core businesses. So I would be keen on, but I think it looks like it's going to be a good number, taking a cue from what the other and I think it's the best EPC and infrastructure proxy play right now. And the price levels are, it hasn't seen as much a brunt as the others have in this fall. So L&T remains a long for us from a long-term perspective.
Which is true actually. L&T has been post its correction where it went to levels of sub 1200, closer to 1200 odd, made its bottom there. It started to move up quite handsomely. What's your sense here in terms of whether or not there is enough support at the base to hold it up here?
So the prices have definitely formed a very good support, and the kind of a rally that we've seen in the last 3 trading sessions, it has basically engulfed previous 15 down days. It clearly indicates that there has been a trend change, at least on a short-term perspective. On a medium-term scale, we definitely see the prices are in a broader sideways bullish consolidation, which suggests that 1200, 1230 are the support levels on the upside. 1400 could be the move that we could anticipate on the immediate basis. So this momentum is likely to at least test the levels of 1400. But when we are looking this on a broader structure and how the momentum indicators is placed, I will not be surprised to see if L&T actually breaks above 1400 and we could see 1600 by next 3 to 4 months. So one should not be taking this on a very short-term perspective, but keep a horizon for 6 months of 15-20% upside. Definitely not ruled out for L&T at the current zone.
Well, that's what's happening with Larsen in Tubro as well. We're waiting for the numbers to come by. Today, the Gurmeet, 2 or 3 days ago, we were talking about this possibility of NBFCs raising some monies via commercial paper. The announcement for PNB Housing Finance came just a while back, 2,450 crores, no less. I don't have a handle on what the coupon rate would have been, but still, the fact that PNB Housing Finance was able to raise 2,450 crores in a single tranche means that in some ways, there is some bit of liquidity that is coming back for some of these NBFCs and the housing finance companies in particular. How well does this augur for the space at large?
Very well, Neeraj. If you see, I think that's one of the key triggers for the market to, really pick up in the second half today. And, we discussed about 20,000 crores was raised, towards the end of the last week. And which had all kinds of names. It had all the names where the ALM issues have been highlighted. And I think I've been speaking to a lot of liquid fund managers of late, and I think we are getting to see some bit of inflows back. I think people shied away post advance tax, and there was a lot of panic. If you see, there's also a change in the ranking order of the AUM because of the redemptions, because HDFC saw very less redemptions as their portfolios had very little exposure to HFCs and some of these the NBFC names. So we're seeing some inflows back. HDFC raised money even at the peak at 9%. Now I think they're raising at about 860, 870. And I think this is also rubbing off in the bond yields. If you see the 10-year, that's about, looking to stabilize around 780, 790 kind of a range. RBI OMOs are helping, and while this public spat between RBI and the government is unfortunate, but I think one key outcome of this would be that we'll have definitely some more liquidity measures. There could be some capital infusion also in some of the, maybe preponement of the capital infusion, maybe, difficult to, say what quantum at this point of time. And maybe some relaxation on, on the SME front. India, I think Prime Minister Modi is also likely to announce some package for SMEs, coming up. So I think something could come up more on the liquidity front, which could further soothe the nerves.
And we'll talk about all of that and more in just a bit. But in the midst of the earnings season, Dabur reported its September quarter numbers, which missed the street expectations, with higher raw material costs weighing in on the margins. Agam Vakil caught up with the CFO Lalit Malik and started off by asking him about the factors aiding top-line growth. Listen.
Well, I think if we just talk in terms of the top line, as far as India is concerned, what we have seen is that we have grown very well into all the categories of HPC as well as for health supplement. There has been some reduction that we have seen in the food category, especially on juices, primarily because of the seasonality, the shifting of Diwali to Q3 this year compared to the base year where we had juices gift pack sale. So that has been one of the reasons, but subject to that, I think we have grown in the double digit in terms of value. As far as international is concerned, we have seen the top line has grown at a respectable rate. However, there has been impact on account of steep devaluation with regard to the currency in Turkey. At the same time, we have seen in other countries like Pakistan and Egypt also having some impact of currency. Though in these markets, the local currency growth has been very respectable, but because of currency, we have seen certain pull down on that, and that has also got an impact coming on the margins to some extent. So that has been the overall summary that we can talk for this quarter.
Okay, so Lalit, your underlying volumes at around 8%. What can you tell us about pricing, the way that's panned out for this quarter? And are we looking at any more price changes as we move into the next couple of quarters, depending on the demand supply situation?
Sure. I think if we look at our price increases has been within the range of 1.5% and adjusted to the mix it comes to 0.5. Therefore, you see the gap between 8.6 in value versus 8.1 in volume. So that has been the scenario. With regard to the pricing, I think a lot depends upon the inflationary pressures that we see coming on account of crude and coming on account of some exchange related impact of rupee getting weakened. There are certain pressures on the inflation, and therefore there will be pressure on the margins, and wherever there is an opportunity we will be taking select price increases to offset part of pressure or the impact on the margins.
So Lalit, I'm looking at the gross margins and they have come off to a certain extent. My question really is then about your input costs and the way you're seeing them develop. You have mentioned inflation to a certain extent, but to what extent can that hamper margins going forward, specifically gross margins? What kind of trends are you seeing in commodity costs right now?
Well, what we have seen in on the crude related input cost has certainly gone up. We have seen the fuel prices also going up, and coming on the other agro-based product because of MSP, we have seen some prices getting firmed up. At the same time, we'll have to wait and see how the impact of monsoon is going to pan out as we go forward, considering there has been some shortfall in the monsoon this year. So keeping all this into account and also adding it up, as I said earlier, on account of currency impact on the import related products, there are certainly the pressures coming on the input cost, and therefore one has to see what kind of synergies one can draw with regard to the advance booking, at the same time looking into the hedging opportunities. But there would still be some impact that one has to consider while taking into account the price increases as we look forward.
Okay, final question then, Lalit. We're a month into the third quarter now. What kind of trends are you witnessing with respect to growth? Is it possible that we could see double digits in the second, rather the third and the fourth quarter when it comes to growth going in, and perhaps an outlook on the kind of traction that you're seeing so far?
Well, I think as far as our annualized base is concerned, we do expect to see the lower double-digit growth coming up on the annualized basis for this fiscal year. As far as the current quarter is concerned, we have seen a positive traction coming at the back of Diwali festival and having our Diwali gift pack on juices. We have seen the positive impact, but overall we don't see very positive consumer confidence. In fact, that has been little muted. So one has to see the overall market sentiments while considering the performance in quarter 3 and quarter 4, but certainly on an annualized basis we should be having the low double-digit volume growth as we see from here.
All right, this is management of Dabur, and we're getting more numbers coming out. So we've got the Lupin net profit numbers. 268.4 crores is the number that we have versus an expectation of 273 odd crores. So pretty much a slight miss, but we've got a reaction to the stock already. We have to wait and watch to see what kind of revenue numbers have been posted on the top line as well. So 3,988 crores was the expectation versus 3,952, which was a muted 1%, but revenues have come in, I think. Profit numbers at 266, there was a correction there, but the revenue numbers will also come up on your screen. The other thing to watch out for,
3951 is the revenue number.
3951. So that also pretty much in line with street expectations on the revenue front. Going to be watching out for a breakup, particularly in terms of what's happening in the US. In terms of the US revenues, margins were seen lower this time around 14.9%, and what they stack up is something that you need to keep an eye out for. But for the EBITDA number, we'll get that too as well. EBITDA was expected at 596 crores. That number has not yet come up, but we'll wait and watch for it. The stock initial spike, but looks like it's coming off now. So 888 on Lupin.
Yeah, I'm just trying to open the BSE and try and see what the console EBITDA numbers look like. Devina will come in a moment, but the top line and the bottom line numbers seem to suggest that this is bang on in line. Gurmeet, do you track Lupin?
Yes, we do, but our top picks in this space is IPCA and Divis, because we right now believe that the US generic business will continue to see margin pressure, and there is too much regulatory intervention. Every day you have US FDA inspection. We had Dr. Reddy today. there could be something up tomorrow. So we probably are looking at something which is a little more steady. So DBs, for example, again had a stellar set of numbers. 50%, generic, 50% CRAMS, which is contract research and manufacturing services. Very good margins. CRAMS give you a good margin. Their generic business, gives steady cash flow, so good combination. IPCA, again, market leader in anti-malaria, therapy and drugs. They've got an order from a global fund, which is also the WHO partner for, supplying anti-malarial drugs. So we look for more where the dependence to a certain extent is lesser on US generics, and they have a good portfolio of both APIs and domestic formulations.
Okay, so that's an inline quarter for Lupin, about a couple of percentage points higher in trade. Manav, I don't reckon you would want to take a trade here.
Actually, the formation looks very good, Neeraj. It is forming a good base formation at its long-term averages, and it's called a head and shoulder formation. So when such formation usually take place, you can actually call for a good short-term bottom in place. It has an important support at 850. So in case if there is any short-term knee jerk because of any news announcement, I think that is the time you really get in. Once the stock manages to close above the levels of 910, you can see the stock eventually moving towards the levels of 1050. So the risk-reward ratio really plays very well, and most importantly, it's a very short-term accumulation that has taken place. So I don't see it breaking on the immediate basis unless there is any negative flow. But at the current moment, I think the structure is still intact and one should go long.
All right. Stay on with us, Manav. Praful Bora of Equirus Capital is joining us on the phone line. Just a quick take on Lupin's numbers. Profits, Praful. Okay, I think we've just lost the line. We'll try and patch that line back to Praful. But in the meantime, let's hop across to Yash. He's standing by with the chart of the day. Good afternoon, Yash.
Good afternoon, Devina. Well, what better day to talk about volatility with the benchmark Nifty index moving close to 250 basis points from the low point of the day. But the story has been similar for the month as well, with October being one of the most volatile months in the calendar year 2018. Let's take a look at the chart over here. What it is showing is the percentage change move so far in the 1 year period. Let's get the previous chart up again. And what you'll notice is that the index, which is the Nifty, that has seen moves of 1% on the lower side and on the higher side for 10 times in this month, which is the most in calendar year 2018. The last time, the closest figure to it is in the month of September, when the index swung between gains or losses of 1% for 5 times on 5 different occasions. That apart, a very interesting point to note is we need to run the SEAG chart, the seasonality chart, and that will show you that in the month of October, the index is down close to 5.5%. Now, this is the first time that Nifty has given negative monthly return in the month of October in the last 6 years. So since 2012, this is the first time that the index has given a negative return, and that is something which we are tracking in the chart of the day segment today.
All right, Yash, thanks very much for that. So indeed, it is a pickup in volatility for the markets. Praful Bora is back with us on the phone line. Praful, I'll just quickly run you through the headline numbers. Profits of Lupin at 266 crores, revenues at 3,951 crores, with the EBITDA coming in at 549 crores. What have you made out of these numbers?
So I think, see, for the past few quarters, I think Lupin has been struggling with the US business. You see the, I don't know the US number this quarter. Can you just run me through it?
I don't have the breakup of the US numbers, but we should get that, be able to get that shortly for you.
I think the number should be, so we were expecting a number closer to $170 million. The run rate has significantly, gone down over the past few quarters. But having said that, I think in terms of, the quarterly earnings, this quarter was expected to be weak as well, similar to what Q1 was there. So I think to that extent, there's no surprise. Going forward, I think there are a few, products that probably can come in, levothyroxine, Ravenexa, so that will probably take the US run rate up. But for now, I think we were expecting this quarter to be weak, and we're not surprised.
Right. What's your pecking order in the pharma space now, Praful?
So we like Divi's, then we like IPCA, and then followed by Orbin.
All right, got that. Praful, thanks very much for joining us. Quick take there on the Lupin numbers. So it was an expectedly, softer quarter for Lupin, and that's what they have. But stocks moved up about 3.5%. 906 is where it's currently trading. And just quick last comments before we head into break from Gurmeet as well as Manav. Gurmeet, anything in particular that you're going to be putting in fresh money right now?
Yeah, so two ideas. One is HDFC Limited. I think we've seen very impressive addition in the assets. I think on a large base of almost 5 trillion of assets, they're clocking decent double-digit volumes. They also have a great depositor base, which we discussed the other day, almost 1.8 trillion depositor base. We've seen that their NIMs have been very steady between 320 to 350 levels. Their spreads across interest rate cycles have been very steady, and the cost to income ratio is one of the lowest in the industry. So I think once this liquidity issue settles, it's given you a good price correction. The business performance has been steady. I think should be a good gradual accumulation in the portfolio. The other one, which despite subdued numbers is Tata Global Beverage. We see tea prices being firm. The northern part plantations have been good, and the Starbucks JV venture has so far been it's been EBITDA positive now, although there's still a loss of about 30 odd crores. We see their first store revenue is almost 3 crores, which is better than Coffee Day and even Jubilant Domino's. So I think incrementally over next, and this is like a 3-4 year call on this, that incrementally I think it will start contributing meaningfully, and they are exiting a lot of their foreign businesses which are loss making. So a lot of restructuring, a lot of positive triggers coming for these two ideas.
Got that. Gurmeet, appreciate you taking out the time. Thanks a lot for joining us. That's Gurmeet Chadha with his views. Manav, any other stocks that have caught your fancy over the last few minutes of trade?
See, in fact, at the current levels, when we are seeing, the stocks have seen a very good bounce. I think if you're looking at stocks like we've seen a good move in HUL. In last 10 minutes, it has seen a very good breakout from its levels of 1600, and most importantly, the volume is also showing a very good confirmation. The prices are breaking above its 10-day average volume. I think apart from the banking space, HUL would be a good outperformance in the near term, and it has important resistance towards the levels of 1650. So in case if even HUL participates, that could even throttle some more movement for the Nifty going forward. So HUL is something that one can also consider for next couple of trading sessions.
Okay, that's HUL. That's 1618 right now. Manav, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That's Manav Chopra with his technical calls. Well, on that note, for the indices at the highest point of the day, the Nifty trading now up 1.55%, so making its dash towards 10,400. Goes to see whether the last half an hour we can actually take it down or no. But symptoms look like there is a strong backing coming in from the bulls. 157 points high. Take that break. We'll be right back.
Good news, guys. Got a promotion and a damn good raise.
Congrats, beta.
Congrats, मेरी तरफ से भी.
From mama too.
वाह, raise? अब तो इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी ले ले.
इंश्योरेंस? कौन सी कंपनी से लूं?
सोचना क्या? चूज वही जिस पर हो पूरा भरोसा.
वीरू, go for convenience. My company is online, quick and simple.
बेटा, but पॉलिसी समझाएगा कौन?
वेबसाइट पे सब है पापा. I can even call and ask.
क्लेम सेटलमेंट का रेशो क्या है? मेरी कंपनी का 98% से ज्यादा है.
That's good, but आज की generation wants everything online. Easy premium payment options, loan facilities और wide range of products.
अरे पापा दीदी, I will decide. Just send your links now. तुम दोनों भी ना. Same choice. LIC.
LIC trending with times. 62 सालों से हर generation की पसंद.
anything and everything about your investments. We're just a touch away. Monday to Friday at 12:30 p.m. only on Bloomberg Quint.
Welcome back. We've got about 32 minutes left to go for market closing, and it looks like an extremely strong uptick on the indices, going from strength to strength. Now just less than 40 points away from taking down the 10,400 mark. So a good 164 points from the start of trade, where we were actually down closer to 20-30 points in the morning session. So it's a very good recovery. Volumes should pull the volumes up and the turnover figure up to see whether or not this kind of a move is substantiated by a rise in the turnover figure as well. So yes, looking extremely strong, particularly on the futures and options side. Already 9.26 lakh crores have been traded. Cash also for this time, when there's half an hour left to go for trade, 33,000 odd crores is definitely more positive on the NSE cash. BSE cash also looks up by about 4,000 odd crores. But we will talk about all of this and more with our next set of guests. Before that, however, let's talk about the Fab 4 stocks of this day. Samit Sarkar is joining in for that. Samit, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Devina. So if you see on the Fab 4 list, the first stock that we have today is Cummins India. Now, the stock has gained after its second quarter net profit, recorded a big beat from the analyst estimates on the back of a strong revenue growth and because of operating leverage. And on the back of that, the stock has gained nearly 11%. Second on the list is PNB Housing Finance. Now, that stock has gained after the company announced that it has successfully raised close to 2,450 crore rupees via commercial papers, and the stock gained nearly 10% post that move. Second on the list is PC Jewellers. Now, this stock is seeing some interesting move. Now, the stock is up for the fourth consecutive session. Now, today it has gained nearly 8%. Now, if you see, in the past 1 year, the stock has gained more than 8% and around 11 times. And in the next trading day, it has another gain close to 7% after this move. Now, if you see, fourth on the list is Reliance Nippon. Now, that stock has been gaining after it reported a good set of numbers in the second quarter earnings, and the stock has gained nearly 5% post that.
Got that, Samit. Thanks very much for that. Bharat Electronics is witness to strong growth in its September quarter. Top line and bottom line numbers. Darshan Mehta caught up with the chairman and managing director at the company to talk a little bit more about how the quarter's performance has been. Listen in.
First of all, in the beginning of the year, we indicated that we will be growing 12 to 15% this year also, like what last year was. So we were expecting revenues of about 11,200 crores over the complete financial year. And today we have crossed the half-line mark, and whatever we planned for the company, we planned a little over 5,000 crores, and we were able to do strongly 5,300 plus crores. So this is a great beginning for us. I expect the remaining 2 quarters also will be doing well like this, and I'm sure whatever 12% year-on-year growth we were looking for FY19 will certainly be able to make it up. Now, this revenues came from a mix of products and services. They are all as planned. They added up to the kitty, and we are not declaring segment-wise, and hence I'll not be able to give you a detail of what went into it.
Okay, if you're looking at it, the other thing is that when will the nominated PSU defense project margins kick into your company, sir?
Yeah, the current order book, what we have got now stands around 49,000 crore plus. In this, there is no effect of the revised margins what the Ministry of Defence has given the guideline. The future orders, starting from Akash 7 Squadron, is going to have that in place. However, if you see today, the majority of the orders BEL is getting, they are on competitive tenders. We are winning competitive tenders with reasonable margins, and hence I am confident that the revised guidelines also will not make a big dent in our overall profitability. Maybe the dip may be not more than 50 to 100 basis points is what I expect at this point of time.
So the gross margins in the quarter contracted close to 160 basis points. So how do we see gross margins going ahead?
I don't see differently at this point of time from the guidance what we have given in the beginning of the year. The EBITDA margins we will be maintaining 17 to 19% even end of the year. I'm quite confident.
Okay, what's the target order book that you're looking at the end of the year? It's close to 49,000 crores right now. What by the end of the year, how much will that be?
Yeah, we are very positive at this point of time also that the 7 squadrons of Akash contract we would be able to sign either during Q3 or Q4, and hence compensating the balance deliveries likely during the next half. Still, I am quite confident that we will close the year with a 50,000 crore plus order book in FY19.
Okay, and my final question, sir, is that where do you see you've already done exceptionally well in the first half? Are you maintaining your guidance for FY19 or are you now increasing it?
No, we do not want to increase, we want to maintain. Because if you see last 8 quarters, whatever we have planned within the company, the entire team, they have put in good efforts to ensure that what we planned, we do. And that went well for Bharat Electronics. So I assure that this year, this financial year also, we'll have the growth what we indicated. It is about 12 to 15% is what we indicated in the beginning. I'm sure certainly we'll be touching the 12% growth and also maintain the profitability margin, EBITDA margin towards 19%.
All right, that's the management at BEL talking about their quarterly performances. Let's bring in Rahul, Mohindar as well as Lancelot, Cunha, both of them joining us on the show right now. Talk about the market moves, and today has been quite spectacular, the way we've moved up from the lows of the day and now perched at the high point of the day, and volumes and turnover extremely strong to support this kind of pricing activity that we've been seeing. So almost 2% higher, 200, just 15 points shy of making our heading towards the 10,400 mark. As the NSE and BSE cash, moment by moment you're seeing the cash volumes picking up significantly. 34,700 is generally a fine print that you see by the end of the trading session. Today we're still about half an hour left to go. You probably see this number closer to 35,000, 36,000 by the end of trade, or maybe even more at the rate at which we are going at. Rahul, closing in on 10,400, what's the call on the index now?
No, I definitely like the price action that we've seen over the last 2 sessions. You know, one was a day where we went up, we had a good correction down today morning and picked back up. So the fact that supports are being respected of 10,100, 10,150, that is very, very pointing to the fact that this market wants to break out, whether it's for a short-term rally even, it wants to take that breakout. But I would jump to bigger conclusions if we close past 10,420, or if even tomorrow we get through that level of 10,420 on the Nifty spot on an intraday basis. So I would recommend staying with a positive stance, holding on to long positions, adding only further if we can go past 10,420.
All right. Lancelot, what are you making out of, at least what we've been seeing the last 1 month, the moves that we've been seeing? Volatility has definitely seen an uptick. But does sentiment overall change now over the last few days and the recovery that we've seen?
But I think a lot of it also is short covering that we are seeing, and so we need to be a little bit careful about making fresh long positions. And like you said, volatility is here to stay. So you could see any negative news again bringing the markets down. So I don't think we are out of the woods yet. I think as far as valuations are concerned, there are very good companies which are valued now at maybe a lot more reasonable valuations as compared to a couple of months back. So that is an opportunity for investors, but it's not really go out and buy the momentum as yet.
Okay. Rahul, what are your stock ideas, if you could quickly run us through them?
See, one is Aurobindo Pharma, where I've been bullish on for some time, but I still think today's breakout should take it further to about 830. So I'd recommend buying into Aurobindo Pharma, keeping a stop loss at 760. Very good medium to long-term stock as well if you don't want to look at this clearly just from that short-term angle. Another one that looks promising to me is ICICI Bank. So after a long time, what I've started seeing is post the little corrections that we've seen, we finally have some good volumes trickling into these counters. So we should move to about 380. And again, this may not happen over a day or two. Probably over the next week or two, you might see this surge up. Good volumes. I'm very, very happy that we made this intermediate high with promising volumes, not just above average volumes today and yesterday, but the volumes on 29th October were also one of the highest daily volumes that ICICI Bank on the NSE has seen in the last 6 odd months. So that's something we have to give cognizance to. So I'd look at buying ICICI with that 378 target, 342 stop loss.
All right. The bigger gainers on the index obviously being Indiabulls Housing now at 833, followed by Tech Mahindra also, which is up closer to 8.5% right now. Tech Mahindra numbers, Lancelot, how did you read into them?
Well, I think the numbers were good, and more impressive was the management commentary that they are getting a larger share of the the 5G implementation, as well as they're seeing a revival on the telecom space. And that is key for Tech Mahindra, because a significant amount of their business comes from the telecom space. So I think going ahead, as everybody gets to moving towards 5G, Tech Mahindra will have a lot more business, and so that's really good for the company.
Would you be a buyer?
I think valuations the stock has already moved up, so maybe you need to wait for a correction and then buy into the stock.
Lancelot, the rate sensitives today have had a good move, arguably led by what's happening to the housing finance companies, PNB Housing Finance raising some monies as well. We'll hear from the management in a few minutes from now. What do you do about some of the rate sensitives which are not doing too well? On a day like this, there are certain heavyweights, the likes of Maruti, Kotak Bank, etc., which are still in the red. What's happening here? Is the market completely devoid of any kind of optimism for a Maruti?
No, I don't think so. I think, maybe there has been some amount of selling happening on Maruti in terms of valuations, because, the stock had gone up significantly high in terms of multiples. And assuming that things are going to slow down, because a large portion of the financing for the vehicle segment, the passenger car segment, comes from the NBFCs. And if liquidity is sort of constrained, there is liquidity constraints on them being able to finance more cars, then obviously Maruti would be, one of the people affected in terms of a slowdown. So given that background, then you start looking at the valuation and you feel, okay, there is a case to re-rate the valuations at a lower multiple than what it is currently trading. So I think that's really what has happened in case of Maruti, because you are seeing some amount of re-rating happen. So unless we start seeing maybe Diwali sales picking up significantly, that trend is going to play out over a while as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that stock is under a bit of a cloud in today's session as well, but the markets are doing really well for themselves. 1.85% and 375 odd points for the Nifty as well. Rahul, maybe you already answered this in part, but if I'm looking to initiate a long on one private financial name in the Nifty, so which has to be a large cap name, and there are a bunch of options out there, what would you choose?
As I told you, banking is what's interesting to me. And, whether I look at an Axis Bank, whether I look at an ICICI, I like the momentum that's rotating into the private banking space. So I clearly see an opportunity here. I clearly see momentum coming in. I would not worry initiating a buy position even at these levels right now.
Clutch of other names, today, for example, the power names, and Torrent Power is up around the 12% in trade. PNB Housing Finance, we spoke with reason, is doing rather well. Piramal Enterprises is back above 2,000, by the way. Maybe was up yesterday's session as well, but 2174 up another 8% for itself. DB Realty has some gains. This whole space, and maybe a fundamental and technical view on power. First, let's get the chart check going. Rahul, Mohindar, a pocket which has just all out of sudden in the last 5, 7, 10 days has virtually doubled. At least Adani Power has. Torrent Power is up another 12.5%. A bunch of other names have done really well. Is there merit in staying long in these names, or would you take some chips off the table?
I think first of all, let me give you some quick observations. Today's volume, we haven't even ended today, but today's volume seems to be again one of the highest volumes we've seen in the last 1 year on torrent power. So one has to factor in this, that such good volume with an up breakout is definitely going to go down as a positive, technically speaking. Secondly, very strong support exists at 210 to 215. We've seen over the last 6 months 3 or 4 times this stock has really pivoted up from here. So it's taken support from the right point. It's got the volume in it. I think it kind of fits my bill in terms of a stock which is kind of ready to move up, a stock that's accumulated fairly well. Of course, we can argue further and say at the same time 275 to 280 has been a resistance in the last 6 months. We've really been range bound between the 215 to 275. I really think we're kind of heading out of that range towards the upward direction. I wouldn't be surprised if you give it 6 to 8 months and you see the stock at 320, 330. It's about, do you have that horizon? Do you have that patience? Can you put in a stop loss of a level of 230? I think if you can, it's definitely worth a go.
Right, most of these stocks actually started their uptrend, I think 2 days back, when the Supreme Court announced that CERC should look into the power purchase agreements and see the tariff changes, the revisions for tariffs for most of these thermal power plants, particularly Gujarat-based ones. What's your sense, Lancelot?
Well, I think as far as power business is concerned, it's a very capital-intensive business, and what we've seen so far is the return on capital is fairly low given the problems that the industry has been facing. So I think going forward, nothing really has changed significantly at the ground level to warrant improved return on earnings. So we would look at staying away from these moves, because while one may tend to look at for value in beaten down stocks and beaten down sectors, you can also get burnt if it doesn't follow up with actual performance. So we would look at maybe staying away from the sector for a while.
Okay, let's also dwell on one newsmaker in the session today, in PNB Housing Finance. That's the company in focus. It's of course seeing a sharp gain in today's trade after it raised about 2,450 crore rupees through a commercial paper. Just bring up the commercial paper route. Just bring up that chart for our viewers once before we get the management in. And the stock is up about 8.5 to 9% on volumes, which have expanded meaningfully as well in today's session. 799 and counting for a PNB Housing Finance. So the man, I of course had a chance to speak up with Kapish Jain, the CFO of the company, and get his thoughts, one on the rates and two on what does this signify. Let's hear out what he had to say.
So these papers have been raised across through mutual funds and banks, through our existing relationships, and the pricing here is absolutely in line with the market and with the way we've been raised in the past, and basically the way the pricing are these days and all for our papers.
Interesting. I mean, one would have thought that all the liquidity issues surrounding the system for any NBFC, raising even a small sum of money, forget a large sum of money, would at least come at a higher cost, if not be virtually difficult. How is it that the rates haven't changed, or is it got to do something with PNB Housing Finance specifically?
See, we are very closely connected with our investors. We make sure that they are well informed in the way we are operating and the way business is progressing, including our liquidity updates, which we give to the market on 1st of October. And with that kind of connect and transparency, the comfort gets drawn in, and basis which transactions do happen, purely on fundamental and financial performance and on the soundness of the business.
Okay. Kapish, I wouldn't want to get into specific names if you don't want to, but can you give me a nature of the people who would have subscribed to these commercial papers? I mean, whether it is largely banks or mutual funds, I mean, can you give us some color about who the investors would be?
These are the leading banks and leading mutual funds on both sides.
Okay. And I heard you mention that these papers have been raised at virtually or near around the same price at which you've done things in the past as well. Any idea, any number that you can share with us, or maybe a range that you can share with us?
See, these papers are slightly on a longer tenor compared to the previous raising that we did. So they are in a range of around 8-quarter kind of, or depending on the tenor and all.
Okay, and roughly the average tenor as well, because I heard you mention depending on the tenor, so I'm guessing here different tenors.
From 3 to 6 months.
Okay, fair call. How is the liquidity in the system, Kapish? I mean, I know with the rates that you're talking about and the fact that your investors readily subscribed, it may not have been difficult for you, but we know that the last 60 days have been particularly difficult for the NBFC space.
So for us, like what we mentioned earlier as well, we did not raise any fund in the entire month of September when the real storm was in play, because we had more we have done a proper planning on our fund requirement, and that way we didn't have the need and we had adequate liquidity. We continue to maintain adequate liquidity on our funding side, and also making sure that we are well disciplined on the short-term side as well. So although we raise this kind of money, this is not going to impact my ALM or my dependencies on short-term paper. Like what you'd have seen in the press release, we continue to have a CP at around 12%, like what we told the market earlier.
All right, that's the management there of PNB Housing Finance talking about the recent news of them raising 2,450 crores via CPs, 800 on the stock price, holding strong with gains of 9.5%. We've got closer to about 10 odd minutes, less than 10 odd minutes left to go for trade to shut shop. Lancelot, anything that you particularly like?
Well, I think IndusInd Bank is one that shows good value. And, I think the banking space also got beaten down along with the NBFC, especially those banks which had exposure to IL&FS. And I think that, the negatives have got completely priced into the stock. So if one invests at these levels, one can see, maybe in next year or so, you should get 20-25% return on the upside. The other issue is as far as the the liquidity that's come into the NBFCs today. I think clearly it shows that where there is quality, like PNB, where there is no chance of or even a hint of default, you are getting money. So you're able to raise money where the market is certain that there is no default. But I think it will still be difficult for those NBFCs who have a certain cloud around them as to their ability to service short-term debt. The second thing that also came out was that this money is raised for 3 to 6 months. So I think while short-term liquidity is there for the NBFCs, longer-term liquidity will still be an issue. Although I know Shriram Transport did raise, long-term debentures, but it's going to be tough for some of the other names to try and raise long-term money. So that's something which will have to be watched, before you can really take a call whether these NBFCs will get that kind of money to grow their business going forward as well.
Okay, interesting. Well, we've spoken a lot about the gainers. Let's talk about some losers as well. Jet Airways is down about 7% in the session today. 1% beverages, and we highlighted some things which didn't quite add up in the results release as well. But that stock is down 5%. I'm not saying that's because of what we highlighted, but the stock is down 5%. Tata Global Beverages is down about 4% in trade today as well. And Rain Industries is down about 3.5% in trade. So Jet Airways, to my mind, that standout name on the losers list. Cummins India, a result reaction, is doing rather well for itself. Strong show out there. The other index, and I know it's difficult to trade Nifty IT because of the spread that exists, but a bunch of these names today have done rather well for themselves, and maybe with reason to 4.5%. I don't think the currency provided the tailwind, Devina, but that Tech Mahindra's numbers didn't sound all that bad, even though Cognizant was probably a mixed bag of sorts between numbers and guidance. But all of these factors leading to this space is kind of underperformed the last few days, moving up very smartly.
Well, that's the thing with even a stock like Mindtree, where we were talking about how the valuations are extremely stretched. The stock was already up 50-55% for the year. That stock, unabashed performance right now, about 8.5 odd %. So it looks like the flavors slowly, we'll wait and watch for some other results as well within the smaller pack. Most of the larger ones have already come out, so you've had time to digest what's happening within this space. But an Infosys, Tech Mahindra, probably the two outliers amongst the pack in terms of the performance.
Yeah, today's session for sure. So Nifty IT and specific IT names. Okay, by the way, just before we get in some closing strategies, some clarifications from Jet Airways as well, saying it's all standard and there's no delay, and so on and so forth. The stock, however, refusing to buy that, down about 8% after that. I don't know if the market believed that there was some shock horse notice and there's some other factors which there's some clarity on. The stock has dipped after that. However, the clarification that comes in from Jet Airways seems to suggest that while there's challenging times for the industry, they are current on payments to Airport Authority of India.
They're saying some aircraft lessors gave them notices for delays in payment, which is why the stock started to correct, and I think the clarification also just comes in on the back of that.
9.5% for Jet Airways, and it continues to grind lower. Rahul, may I ask you, before getting your closing strategies, a thought on Jet Airways as a trade?
I definitely feel if you're trying to trade this stock short term, there's more positive than negative, and this might be quite contrary to the news that's kind of flowing on the stock. But technically, one could continue to look at buying, let's say at 230, 31 levels. I would say that keeping a stop loss at about 219. That's the key thing. Keep a stop at 219. One could hold on to the stock. I don't expect fireworks, but maybe a move to about 245 odd.
Okay. Well, 10.5% lower for Jet Airways in this session today. Lancelot, any thoughts on aviation and Jet Airways in particular, this announcement too?
Well, I think aviation is one space which I've always been very wary of and stayed away from. And if you look at globally also, there's very few aviation companies that have made profits consistently for a long period of time. So rather than try and ride the cycle, it's better to stay away. So that's my call on this.
Okay, fair call. We'll probably get in one final thought from Lancelot Dicona post-market closing as well. But 15:23, just about 3 minutes left before we start the market wrap. Rahul, Mohindar, to you first. Your top closing strategy.
Stock specifically, I'm going to go with Wipro. I think we're going to see about 343, 344 tomorrow. So I'd buy into Wipro, keeping a stop loss at about 325. And on the Nifty, yes, I would still wait for follow-through of 10,420 tomorrow. If we follow through that level tomorrow, I definitely think one needs to change gears at least for the medium term.
Okay, and Rahul, just one final thought really. I know you made a reference just a few minutes ago about the kind of volumes that exist, and so on and so forth. My question to you would be, after 2 days out of 3, which have been rather good for the markets in the week gone by, would you expect follow-through action in the next 2 days itself, or would it be a bit delayed? Because Monday and Wednesday both, today and Monday both, have been rather strong days.
I think follow-through can come in, but I don't expect it to be sudden. Although, it's a tough question to answer, but I think there is going to be some hurdle. There is a set of traders that's stuck, that's going to kind of use this upward move to liquidate or get out of some positions. So I don't think it's going to be cruise control from here, to answer you very categorically. But yes, so if you have a few days in time, if you have a week or two in hand, if you're trading the November contract, you should be smooth.
All right. 5 minutes left to go. Lancelot, did you take a look at the numbers for Dabur? How did you read it?
No, I haven't actually had a look at it.
As a pocket consumption right now?
Yeah, I think consumption is doing well. I mean, we saw good numbers coming from Nestle. Hindustan Lever also saw a decent amount of volume growth. So I think the consumption space as well as the FMCG space are areas which will offer some protection as far as consistency of earnings and growth is concerned. But then you've also got to look at the valuation, the valuation perspective, and all these stocks are trading at very high valuation. So it's a bit tough to go and buy into them, although earnings might be sustained over the next 2-3 quarters, because the valuations are really expensive. So one would have to consider whether it's worthwhile paying that extra money for safety, or better to wait for some kind of correction, or look for maybe the beaten down sectors where one can buy into stocks that will turn around over a period of time.
Okay, Lancelot, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us today in our studios, I might add, and giving us your thoughts on such an important day, a big day for market, and good to have Lancelot Dicona with us. Let's start wrapping up the markets. 181 points higher for the Nifty 50, about 520 for the Sensex, and about 300 for the Nifty Bank. So it's been a strong show. Not necessarily just by the banking names, a lot of non-banking names have done rather well for themselves. Small caps and the mid caps too doing okay. Maybe you could have argued that on a day like this for the Nifty, the market should have been a lot better than what it is right now, but hey, no complaints. It's a day in the green. Let me talk about the large caps first and see what's moved around. There is Tech Mahindra, which is up a whole 9% in the session today. Well, nobody would have thought yesterday that with the numbers that have come in, the stock would gain 9%. I think the commentary from the management very, very bullish. Indiabulls Housing Finance 8%, HDFC 6%, HCL Tech, Infosys, TCS, that whole IT back because of the currency as well, maybe has done really well for itself. Bit of safe haven and bit of a valuation play out there too. IndusInd Bank reverses some of the losses that it's had in a really long time. What about the losers? Well, few and far in between really. Tata Steel and was a top loser at a point of time, just about 2%. So 4% intraday recovery. Dr. Reddy's about a 3% intraday recovery. Maruti continues to grind lower. Adani Port, one of the winners of yesterday, is slightly lower. And the private banks, HDFC and Kotak Bank, somehow have fallen out of favor in the last few days, just not moving, irrespective of what the market seems to be doing. There's a clear shift, Devina, apparently, from the retail-focused banks to the corporate-focused banks. But that notwithstanding, the broader markets, we could have bargained for more. But hey, not a bad day.
Well, not a bad day, but you know, the outperformance is missing vis-a-vis the index. So the mid caps and the small caps doing what they're doing. You have specific stocks, though, on the back of earnings news that have done really well. PNB Housing, for one, is a stock that started to move up post the announcement of them raising closer to 2,500 crores via CPs. The stock moved up about 9% Cummins India, on the back of a good strong set of numbers, since the start of the trading session was up, and by close around 11.5%. Torrent Power is the other one. So the entire power space is really buzzing about. Torrent Power being one, the last 2 or 3 trading sessions has done exceptionally well, taking its tally over the last 2-3 trading sessions to northwards of about 20-25%. DB Realty is a strong show in today's session, closer to 17% higher. You've got a Piramal Enterprises, Divan Housing Finance, following suit in line with what the Indiabulls Housing Finance are doing, and some of the other housing finance companies. So Divan Housing Finance Company, Repco Home, these are the names that have done extremely well in today's session. IRB Infra reported numbers as well, and the stock is ending the day closer to about 10% higher. From the smaller banks, and Andhra Bank and Allahabad Bank, both these stocks doing well, seeing some amount of price as well as volume action. Andhra Bank in the last half an hour of trade saw a perk up of 6.5%, and Allahabad Bank too trading closer to 44. That's up about 6% in trade. Mindtree from the mid-cap IT basket doing okay for itself. Amongst losers, Jet Airways was beaten down heavy just a few moments ago. There was some news about lessors issuing notices regarding some payment delays to the company. The stock moved down about 8%. And this on Zinc is now down closer to 8.5%. Tata Global Beverages, 1% Beverages, Balrampur Chini and Dabur on the back of results. All of these stocks have underperformed in today's session. So 1% down 4.5%. Balrampur Chini reported numbers, while the show was on, it's down about 3.5%.
Well, all in all, not a bad day of trade at all. Something that we probably did bargain for at the start of the trading day, but have gotten. The rest of the world markets were doing okay too. For most part of at least the Asian markets were, and it'll be useful to bring up what the European markets and Dow futures are doing before we analyze what the day's trade has looked like, and then post final questions to Rahul Mohindar. Strong day for the world markets too, 2% higher for CAC. That's a remarkable uptick for CAC, and this follows what the European markets did in trade yesterday. I would guess that Dow futures too would be trading in the green after, well, a decent showing in trade yesterday, about 1/3%. So, well, not a bad support from global markets too. But our markets, Devina, market breadth, I'm sure, is positive.
Market breadth, and more interestingly to see the turnover numbers, because as you see at the market breadth, while it was anticipated that you would see a positive number by the end of trade, mid-afternoon was slightly more dicey, but then the turnover numbers, and we said that we could probably see a number of closer to 40,000 by end of trade, and this is definitely on the higher side for the cash market turnover, which has been closer to 34,000 odd crores up until now. For F&O, that is definitely on the higher side for a non-expiry day, or even the run-up to an expiry day. 10,54,922 crores on NSE cash. For that matter, BSE cash also has seen an increment in the overall turnovers. But it's interesting to see where the gains have come in on the index, and definitely the high-weighted stocks. HDFC Bank adding 40 odd points, ICICI Bank 13 points, and Infosys and TCS being the heavyweights. They're propelling the index.
Yeah, HDFC about 40, HDFC Bank unfortunately marginally in the red, Maruti Suzuki marginally in the red, but the reds don't matter today. It's all about what some of the financials and the IT names have done, and those two heavyweight sectors do so well. Difficult to find a cause for some downtick. Rahul Mohindar, let me pose a difficult question to you. Between the Nifty Bank and the Nifty IT, what looks more promising in the near term?
Near term, I'll clearly go with the Bank Nifty. I won't go with the Nifty IT. In fact, I reviewed it again today. We are selectively bullish on IT. So, we're looking at, as I was pointing out earlier also, a stock like Wipro. We're looking at some action in Tech Mahindra. But broadly speaking, I don't think we're going to surpass into new highs. We expect a lot of resistance on Nifty IT at about 15,300 to 400. So whilst you may trot a little bit, it's going to be hard to kind of follow through a big way. But a lot of the banks, they have shown good volume action, as I was pointing out earlier. You can see, these stocks are attempting to make slightly biggish moves. And I'm talking about heavyweight Bank Nifty stocks. So clearly my preference would be on the Bank Nifty. In fact, I'd extend that by saying it's encouraging to see that the market is really not picking up stuff that's just fallen. There's not many buyers, even on a day like today, for something like an ONGC or Tata Motors or Bharti, stuff that's really been beaten off over the last 2 or 3 months. So the market's becoming very selective. I mean, they're trying to look for the strongest within the strongest sectors. And I think that's always a good sign. So even though we've really not broken out on the Nifty per se, I think the stocks are giving us those first signs that we're in for a bit of a rally from here.
Okay. Rahul, leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining in today and giving us your perspective. Really appreciate your time. And on a day like this, to have Rahul Mohindar. By the way, I think we'll have Tata Motors, the numbers out. So we'll just continue this broadcast for a bit longer before we take that break, because the numbers should be out any moment. Were we expecting losses to the tune of 1,000 crores? Maybe not. 874 crores was the loss. And I think the net loss, Devina, has come in at 1,050 crores. This is not great news. It's actually a much worse performance than what we would have anticipated. This versus a profit of 992, but that doesn't matter. Versus an expectation of a loss of 874, it's a 1,000 crore loss or over 1,000 crore loss. Now, the key to monitor is what the EBITDA numbers have looked like and how is the revenue numbers come out to be as well. As of now, we just have the net loss number, which definitely looks disappointing on the face of it. But let's wait for the internals to come out and then maybe talk more about it. In the morning, Yatin was talking about how, one, the number delivery, yes, but two, the commentary from the management on a bunch of issues would be important too. But the first part of this release, which is the numbers by themselves, are not looking that great.
Well, it was expected to come on the lower side. There was a 10% decline in JLRX China volumes that was expected to any which ways have an impact on the profit numbers as well as the sales numbers, and lower margins were seen for JLR on the back of those lower sales volumes. The expectations were about 10–10.5% margin range on a standalone business. We'll wait and watch as to what's come out of that. But the revenue number has come in at 72,112 odd crores. So 72,112 is lower than what was expected. We were expecting a number of 72,980 crores. So that too has seen a miss. So at least top line number, bottom line number, both have seen a miss this time around for JLR. I think JLR numbers are also...
Yeah, 5,635 million pounds, Devina, is the JLR revenue, net revenue. That's 5,635 million pounds.
Which is also a miss, because we were expecting 5,700 million pounds.
Sorry, you were expecting?
5,700.
Yeah, so JLR too has been a culprit. I am told Vinita Sharma of Narnolia Financial Services with us on the line. A bit Yatin will join in as well. But Vinita, thanks much for joining in. What do you make of these numbers, the initial numbers? The console revenues by and large seem okay, but the loss number much higher than what the Bloomberg estimates were.
Yeah, and we were more than things, we were more concerned about how the EBITDA margin will pan out. And on a consolidated basis, our EBITDA margin calculation was around 7.3% on a consolidated basis. And on the standalone, we were expecting some around 9.4% or so. So at the face of it, I think the margins are pretty in line, but it's like, below the EBITDA, things are not much in control of the management, and that's the reason why we are seeing that kind of a loss figure.
What about the JLR numbers? The loss is at 100 million?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, JLR, see, management has already, and we are very well averse. Yeah, it is very much low into what we were totally kind of expecting. But if you look at it, the kind of turmoil and the kind of situations, the overall situations that is panning out regarding the China sales, or even on the UK side, delays in the WLTP, which was, and the kind of destocking by the dealer. So all these things have weighed on the company, and that's the reason why we are seeing this kind of bad. Though, I mean, definitely a weak set of numbers, and not very happy with the bottom line though.
What would you do with the stock though, Vinita?
See, we have been neutral on the stock for quite some time now, considering, the overall industry thing, not much clarity on how things will emerge. Not only even on the EBITDA side, the top line was already under threat, various delays and changes in norms going on. So there was a threat on the top line, as well as on the margin front also. Things have not panned up. I mean, the expenses, the other expenses, or even on the employee expenses. So things are not very clean for Tata Motors. So we have been neutral for a long period of time on this stock.
We'll leave it at that, Vinita. Thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yatin Mota with us. Yatin, how do you read into the numbers?
Well, Neeraj, if you look at the overall numbers, it has been muted. The only silver lining here is that according to the press release, the JLR EBITDA margins have come in at 9.1%. We were anticipating it to be close to 7.6%. So on the JLR front, clearly they have surprised on the positive side. But there is a revenue miss on JLR, because we were expecting the revenues to be close to 5.7 billion British pounds, and they have posted a number of close to 5.6 billion British pounds. So on the top line front, slightly weaker. However, if you look at the consolidated earnings, the calculated EBITDA margin excluding other income is 9.4%. We were expecting the margins to be at 9%, so almost a 40 basis points better than the street expectations. However, we were expecting revenues to be close to 73,000 crores, and they have come in at close to 72,100 crores. So on the top line for both JLR and the consolidated entity, it has been almost 1,000 crore kind of a miss. However, we need to watch out for the management commentary on how really do they look at margins shaping up, and China and US as a market shaping up, because of trade tensions we have seen significant amount of sentiment impact. In fact, if you look at the second quarter JLR numbers, the retails are down 13%, and the wholesales from JLR stable are down nearly 14.7%, including the sales which have got impacted in China. More importantly, the EBIT stands at a negative 0.7% for JLR. Of course, this is impacted because of the foreign exchange losses, and on a consolidated basis also, Tata Motors has reported a 500 crore forex loss. So clearly the forex loss is eating into the profitability for JLR and Tata Motors this time.
Indeed, Yatin, thanks a lot for breaking down those numbers for us. So, barring the beat on the margins, everything else and all parameters seem to be a slight bit of a miss as per our Bloomberg expectations. But that's Tata Motors for you. Numbers, you will probably see a reaction come start of trade tomorrow once these numbers are digested properly. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Countdown. Thanks a lot for watching. We've got the day's market wrap for you coming up next.